So I am starting a new therapy for my ME-CFS, and I have to say that I am pretty optimistic about it. It's called Intermittent Hypoxic Hyperoxic Therapy. I know that's a bit of a mouthful, but it's a therapy which I believe makes quite a lot of sense for ME-CFS. And if you can successfully adapt to this therapy, your baseline stamina should improve, your baseline post-exertional malaise threshold should improve, you should have less crashes and be able to live a more active life safely. So in today's video I'm going to tell you more about this therapy, what are the principles which underpin it, why might it help ME-CFS, and what are the hopes that I have for what I might get out of this therapy. But first, my name is Patrick Usher and I am author of the book Understanding ME-CFS and Strategies for Healing, in which I break down some of the latest, most exciting research into ME-CFS and long COVID, as well as talking about a range of treatment strategies that I have tried in order to improve my own quality of life as an ME-CFS patient. You can find links for the book down below, as well as a link to a free sample chapter. Now, for those who have followed my journey recently, you will know that I travelled to Romania in order to have 60 sessions of medical grade hyperbaric oxygen treatment. And that, sadly, the whole experience was a bit of a disappointment and didn't really lead to any improvement. Nevertheless, I'm not giving up, and so I'm moving on to the next treatment. And when it comes to intermittent hypoxic hyperoxic therapy, or IHHT, I actually am much more optimistic and much more hopeful that this is a treatment that could help me. And that is despite the fact that there hasn't really been any research into this for ME-CFS, although there was a paper which looked into this for long COVID, and I will make a different video which will explore that paper in depth. But there really is, I think, a much stronger rationale for why this treatment should help ME-CFS, likely more than a therapy like hyperbaric oxygen. Okay, so why do I say that? Well, when we think about ME-CFS in a very basic way, there's a reduced oxygenation capacity in the body. You're not getting that extraction of oxygen into the muscles, into the brain. You have a reduced or lowered anaerobic threshold, the point at which the body switches to oxygenating and making energy via lactic acid. You have very poor stamina. You have cellular and mitochondrial issues. So all of these things working together to make your exercise capacity reduced, and the reactions to physical activity and the recovery from physical activity to be far more tortured than when you are actually well. And so if there could be a therapy that could actually change the baseline functioning of all of those problems, then you could be onto something that could really help you, because you would crash far less, which means you would be having far more days that are actually put into healing mechanisms, because when you're not crashing, your body actually has a chance to do some healing, and you should be able to engage in more physical activity safely and have a better quality of life. And even better, if you could have a therapy which actually could maintain those benefits in the long term, so that you could actually adapt to it and actually keep that adaptation. This is all possible, the IHHT, which is why I think that it is an exciting possibility for ME-CFS. So what are the principles on which intermittent hypoxic hyperoxic therapy are based? And it's actually based on the physiological adaptations which occur when you live at high altitude. So people who go from sea level up to living in the Swiss Alps, their bodies have to undergo certain physiological adaptations. Those adaptations are basically what the body needs to do in order to still function while living in a lower oxygen environment. So at sea level, the quantity of oxygen in the atmosphere is about 21%. But when you go up to living in the Swiss Alps, for example, it can drop to 15 or 14% oxygen concentration. Here's a sort of diagram which shows you different concentrations of oxygen depending where you are. So down in the Amsterdam, which is super flat, you're at that 21%. But then, like Feldberg or Zugspitze and in the Alps in the centre of Europe, 1,500 metres, almost 3,000 metres. Matterhorn, Mont Blanc, then moving up to 4,500 meters, almost 5,000 meters, while Kilimanjaro in Kenya is almost 6,000 meters at 10% oxygen, then Mount Everest at 7%, up at almost 9,000 meters, but never mind about Mount Everest. When people go up to these levels, the body has to undergo certain adaptations, and in particular it will increase more red blood cells in order to carry more oxygen to the tissues, because oxygen is carried within red blood cells. In a general kind of way, it will essentially increase the oxygenation capacity of the body. So this kind of physiological adaptation comes with significant health benefits in general, and theoretically could work well for an illness like ME-CFS, where we have this reduced exercise capacity. So what's the solution? To rent a chalet, an Airbnb chalet in the Swiss Alps for 3 or 4 months? Or is there a way of achieving at least significantly the same effect while staying at low altitude? And this is where the intermittent hypoxic hyperoxic therapy comes in, because the primary aim of this treatment is to essentially mimic the same effects of living at high altitude, to get them without actually having to go and live on the top of a mountain. So what's this all about? Well, let's break it down. So it's intermittent, hypoxic, low oxygen, hyperoxic, high oxygen therapy. So what this involves is that you breathe through a mask in cycles, low oxygen for a period of time, followed by high oxygen. So you might breathe lower oxygen concentration for 5 minutes, and then a higher oxygen concentration for 3 minutes, and that's kind of a cycle. And then you kind of repeat these kind of cycles for up to 30 to 60 minutes at a time. And that would constitute one session of IHHT. And when it comes to the hypoxic breathing, you're typically aiming to get to a point where you can tolerate 10 to 12% oxygen concentration. So again, if we go back to our image, once you're at 10 to 12%, it's essentially like you're living at the top of Kilimanjaro, which is almost 6,000 meters, or, at the Matterhorn, almost 5,000 meters. So you're pretty high up when you're breathing like that. However, you might start therapy in a much more gradated way. So, for example, at 15% oxygen concentration, which would put you at around 3,000 meters, and then over every 3 or 4 sessions or 5 sessions you could drop a percentage, and as you move towards ideally getting to 10%. And so it is a therapy that doesn't have to be like a sledgehammer. You can really adapt into it, you can go slowly, you can take breaks, you don't have to do it every day, but the aim is to get to 10% ideally. And at the same time, you have these, hyperoxic recovery periods within the cycles where you might breathe 30% oxygen. And, I haven't fully got my head around, the kind of rationale for the oscillations between hypoxic and hyperoxic. I believe that it's something to do with the way the cells at the mitochondria will respond to the deprivation of oxygen, followed by the repletion of oxygen, and that this actually leads to better antioxidant production at a cellular level than if you just breathed in hypoxic air. And so basically the idea is that you will be tricking your body into thinking it's at high altitude, and therefore gaining all of the benefits of that, the increased red blood cell production and the increased oxygenation capacity. There's also a range of cellular and mitochondrial improvements that occur, which I'll go into some other time. But it's basically about tricking the body into that. And then your baseline anaerobic threshold, your baseline stamina should improve, thereby allowing you to do more and to crash less. An obvious objection to this would be, well, you're only actually breathing in this hypoxic air for 30 to 40 minutes. Is not the same as living at very high altitude. You're not actually going to get the same effect as you might have if you lived in the Swiss Alps all the time. The thing about it is that this therapy allows you to go to quite low amounts of oxygen. You're actually, you can work up to that 6,000 meters, the equivalent of being on top of Mount Kilimanjaro. Like, that is quite a powerful dose. So, what I'm trying to get at is, you wouldn't live on top of Mount Kilimanjaro. People don't live there. People in general, when it comes to high altitude, they don't live on the very top of these mountains. They might live at 2,000 meters or 3,000 meters. in some places, but they're not actually living at 6,000 meters. So even though you're not like going up to live in the mountains, you're getting a much more significant dose than you would get from the typical places you would live in at high altitude. And so because of that, even though it's only something you're doing, for a part of the day, the effect has the potential to be pretty strong and to actually, potentially move you more towards the kinds of effects that you might get if you were living all the time at, 2,000 or 3,000 meters. So there's a kind of balancing out because the dose is stronger. This video is sponsored by Normalite. Now, I have been using Normalite for 3 years, and it is the most helpful supplement that I have found in managing my own condition. Like a lot of ME-CFS patients, I suffer with low blood volume, and Normalite is a highly effective strategy for combating this issue. It is a form of oral rehydration solution, and one study by Meadow et al. From 2019 found that this kind of formulation can boost blood volume as effectively as a saline IV. When I drink Normalite, I really notice the difference. I can feel the blood volume expanding throughout my body, my legs become lighter, my nervous system calms down. Even better is that Normalite has been specifically created for patients with illnesses like ME-CFS, long COVID and POTS. So check out the link below to order your own bags of Normalite. I personally enjoy the pure flavour, but it does come in a range of options. Now what I want to do is I want to do other videos on this topic. The next one is going to go into much more detail. I'm going to look at the paper that utilised this therapy in around 70 long COVID patients who were actually in hospital, and they did this therapy over 5 weeks and they had great results. So I'm going to talk about a paper that looked at that. I'm going to talk more about the science into it. I've been learning about this from Rosalba Courtney, who is a breathing instructor and who does these treatments out in Australia. She sent me an article that she wrote about it and actually turned me on to this therapy. I've also been learning from a Russian doctor, Dr. Arkady Prokopov, who has written a book on his use of this therapy for chronic Lyme patients. So I'm going to be going into more detail about what might actually happen at a physiological level when you do this treatment, and I also hope to interview some of these people about their understanding of this therapy. But for now, I'll just read you a few things from Rosalba Courtney's article so that we can get something more of a sense about what's actually involved. So she says, IHT increases the efficiency with which the body takes up and transports and utilises oxygen. The heart and lungs are stimulated to increase their functions, and even over the long term to increase in size. Blood vessels dilate, and new capillaries are formed in the heart, brain, and skeletal muscles. In the blood, levels of erythropoietin, EPO, hemoglobin, and myoglobin increase. Erythropoietin is the hormone that increases red blood cells. All these factors make the blood capable of carrying more oxygen. On a cellular level, there is a growth of the cellular structures needed for the metabolism of oxygen. If you undergo IHT, the net effect is a decrease in the need for oxygen by about 20% and an increase in the ability to use oxygen as measured by VO2 max. Like a finely tuned motor vehicle, if you are adapted to altitude with IHT, you can run on less fuel with less wear and tear to your motor. And when you need to run in high gear, you can do so and use all the fuel or oxygen you need to achieve maximum performance. Once the body has built the structures, such as new capillaries, new blood components, new cells for the heart and lungs, new mitochondria and enzymes for using oxygen, it has increased its functional reserve and can extract more oxygen from normal lowland atmospheric air. So from that, we can really see, like as a therapy and as a rationale for an illness like ME-CFS, if you can actually adapt to this, it makes an awful lot of sense that it should help. And in fact, Rosalba has treated quite a lot of ME-CFS patients in her clinic, and I've corresponded with her and I've asked her about this, and she says that people tend to do really well. This is, in coming now to kind of my hopes for the therapy, this is my main hope. Like my biggest issue over the course of the illness, and I suffer from brain fog and I have had difficulties with insomnia and I've unpleasant symptoms relating to the blood hyperperfusion and so on. If there's one thing that I would want to improve, it is my stamina, because stamina is the capacity that allows for independent living. And I have been able to live independently for much longer stretches than, I used to have to live with my dad for a long time. And that's good, but the actual capacity to be able to get on with an independent life without being taken down just from the activities of daily living, which is what can happen to me. You have to go shopping here, you have to deal with these things, whatever it is that comes up, and suddenly you crash. To actually have an independent life which has less of those, down periods would be a huge difference for me. And at the moment, I feel that I'm still in that situation where I'm observing society from the outside. I can't really fully participate, or even semi-participate in the way that I would want to be able to. And if I had a therapy that could allow me to live a more engaged life, even if I'm still struggling cognitively, and even if I can't go jogging or whatever, I don't care. Just something that actually allows me to have a radically different chapter, feels new and much more functional. That's really what I've been looking for a long time. Hoped to get it from the hyperbaric, didn't happen, but now I'm pretty hopeful that it could happen from this. And I think that the sort of exciting thing about it is, it might be the case that, someone does 30 sessions, which is the kind of recommended amount. They do that, their functional capacity improves, and they can go into a healing spiral just from that. The effects will wear off because it's like an adaptation, and if you're not actually forcing your body to adapt continuously, the adaptation will go away. And so it's possible that it mightn't lead to a long-term effect. However, you can get at-home devices which can allow you to continue to practice the therapy and therefore to maintain the benefit. And this is something that I find particularly exciting, because if you can, say, successfully adapt to 10% oxygen, and then you can keep doing that at home, nothing can take that away from you then. So no matter, whatever else is going on, you can maintain that. And I find that to be very exciting. A lot of these at-home devices are terribly expensive and not really an option. I did find one from a company called Balance is still expensive, but somewhat more affordable. I'll put the link down in the description box. A lot of these devices are 15 to 20,000 euro, which is just out of the question. But the Balance one was more affordable. And then I've also found that there may be some that you can order from China. I don't know, there may be some quality control issues there, I don't know. I think they're kind of what companies in Europe actually order, which again are cheaper still, maybe on websites like Alibaba or madeinchina.com. So, anyway, the point is there are options to look into. So I'm excited about this therapy. I'm starting very soon. Actually, by the time this video goes out, I will have been doing the therapy for maybe 10 days or something like that. And I'm doing it in a clinic in Bucharest, Romania's capital. And my plan is to try and do as many sessions as I can without it being too much for my body, whatever rate that seems right to be, over a couple of months. And then we'll just see what happens, and if there's a good response. After I go home, I will invest in my own device, and I hope to continue doing it over the winter. I've seen that the Russian doctor I mentioned, Dr. Arkady Prokopov, or is it Prokopov? Prokopov, I think. Always get it mixed up. But anyway, I noticed that he recommends a treatment period of around 8 months, and he says that in his chronic Lyme patients, that's usually what is required for people to potentially recover. That's what I would consider doing. But anyway, I will keep you updated on my progress. I'll try and do a video after I've done it for a month, and then again after the 2 months. And I hope to, as I say, get experts on the channel who are familiar with this and ask them about their experience. Also keen to talk to people who may have tried it. I know that there's 1 or 2 people who have left in the comments, I think a couple of people who have said that they're trying this, and I think at least one of them said they were doing well. So I'm interested also to interview patients who may have been trying this. And just see, where it leads. At some point, I am allowed to get better. So, therapies have definitely helped me, but in terms of that actual, breakthrough, it's not happened yet. And maybe this could be the time. We shall see. So that is it for this video. I'll be interested to hear your thoughts if you've tried this, if you consider trying it. What do you think of it? Please consider joining my newly launched Patreon and Discord community, a treatment and research support community where we have once a month Zoom calls, sharing tips and strategies. There's a dedicated Discord channel with lots of different sections for sharing on a range of topics relating to ME-CFS. as well as the ability to interact with me, ask me questions for Q&A videos, as well as submit questions for upcoming guest speakers on the channel. So it's only €5.50 a month or $7. Please check out the links down in the description box. And otherwise, that's it for this video, and I will see you in the next one.